The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. David's 81-year-old father had been driving home from the grocery store, a route he'd driven 1,000 times, 3 miles from his house, when he became confused at an intersection he had known for 40 years. He stopped in the middle of it. He wasn't sure which way home was. A police officer found him there, calm but disoriented, the groceries melting in the back seat. No one was hurt. That Tuesday, everyone was lucky. But here is what haunted David afterward. The signs had been there for over a year, and his whole family had seen them. The new dents on the rear bumper that his father couldn't quite explain. The time he'd gotten lost coming home from David's house. The way he'd started driving more slowly, more cautiously, hugging the center line. The grandchildren who had quietly started making excuses not to ride with Grandpa. Everyone had noticed something. No one had said anything, because the conversation felt impossible, because no one wanted to be the one to take away their father's independence, because they kept telling themselves it wasn't that bad yet. It took a disoriented man stopped in the middle of an intersection to force the conversation that should have happened a year earlier. I'm telling you David's story today because it is one of the most common and most avoided situations in all of elder care. Driving represents independence, identity, and freedom in a way few other things do, which is exactly why families avoid this conversation until a crisis forces it. And by then, the cost of waiting can be catastrophic, not just for your parent, but for everyone else on the road. Today I'm going to show you the real warning signs that driving is becoming unsafe. How to tell the difference between normal cautious aging and genuine danger. How to approach this conversation in a way that preserves dignity and the relationship. And what options exist that most families never consider. Because this does not have to be a binary between driving and total dependence. There is far more nuance here than most families realize. Before we go further, if David's story sounds even a little familiar, share this video with the family members who share responsibility for your parent. This is a conversation that needs everyone aligned. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it now. Every week one published content exactly like this, clinical, honest, and built for families navigating the care of an aging parent. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Let me start with something important, because it sets the entire frame for this conversation. Age itself is not the problem. Plenty of people in their 80s are safe, competent drivers. The issue is never simply how old someone is. It is the specific physical and cognitive changes that affect driving ability, which vary enormously from person to person. This matters because it protects you from two opposite mistakes. The first mistake is doing nothing, because lots of older people drive fine. The second is overreacting and stripping away independence from a parent who is still perfectly safe. Neither serves your parent. What serves them is paying attention to the actual specific abilities that driving requires, and noticing when those specific abilities start to decline. So let me walk you through what those abilities are and what happens to them with age. Driving safely requires 3 things working together: vision, cognition, and physical function. Vision changes with age in ways that directly affect driving. Reduced ability to see in low light, increased sensitivity to glare from headlights, slower recovery from brightness, and narrowed peripheral vision that makes it harder to catch a car or pedestrian approaching from the side. Cognition matters because driving is one of the most cognitively demanding activities most people do. It requires sustained attention, rapid decision-making, the ability to process multiple streams of information at once, and quick reaction time. And physical function matters because driving requires the strength and flexibility to turn and check blind spots, the foot speed to move between pedals, and the range of motion to handle the wheel. Conditions like arthritis, neuropathy, or the after effects of a stroke can quietly compromise all of these. When you understand that driving rests on these three pillars, the warning signs stop being vague worries and become specific, observable things you can actually watch for. So let me give you those warning signs concretely, because this is what most families need and rarely get. The first category is the physical evidence on the car itself. New dents and scrapes, particularly on the bumpers, the sides, or near the mirrors, that your parent can't fully explain or seems to minimize. Scrapes along the garage, damage to the mailbox or the fence at the end of the driveway. This physical evidence is one of the most reliable early signals, precisely because it's objective. It's there whether or not anyone wants to admit what it means. The second category is what you observe when riding with them, and I want to strongly encourage you to actually do this deliberately if you have concerns. Does your parent drift out of their lane or straddle the center line? Do they react slowly to brake lights, signals, or pedestrians? Do they confuse the gas and brake pedals even momentarily? Do they fail to check mirrors or blind spots before changing lanes? Do they miss stop signs or traffic signals, or seem surprised by them? Do they drive significantly too slowly or stop when they shouldn't in a way that creates hazards for other drivers? Do they get flustered, anxious, or angry in situations that didn't used to bother them, merging, heavy traffic, unfamiliar areas? The third category is navigation and confusion. Getting lost on familiar routes is one of the most serious warning signs there is, because it can indicate cognitive changes that affect far more than driving. If your parent has gotten lost going somewhere they've been 100 times, that is not a small thing. That deserves immediate attention, both for driving and for their overall cognitive health. The fourth category is the social evidence, the signals other people are already giving you. Has your parent gotten new traffic tickets or warnings? Have there been near misses they've mentioned, or that others have mentioned? And here's a subtle but powerful one. Have other family members quietly started avoiding riding with them? When the grandchildren make excuses not to get in the car with Grandpa, the family already knows something. They just haven't said it out loud. Pay attention to that collective unspoken knowledge. It is often more accurate than anyone's individual assessment. If you're finding this valuable, and I hope you are, take 1 second right now and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach other families wrestling with exactly this, often in silence and uncertainty. Like and keep watching. Now let me address the hardest part, the conversation itself, because how you approach this determines almost everything about how it goes. The single most important thing to understand is what driving actually means to your parent. It is not just transportation. It is independence. It is the ability to come and go without asking permission, to be useful, to not be a burden. For someone who has spent 60 years as a fully autonomous adult, The prospect of losing the keys can feel like the first step toward losing everything: their freedom, their dignity, their identity, their place in the world. When you understand that this is what's at stake for them emotionally, you understand why the head-on approach so often fails and so often damages the relationship. So here is how to approach it differently. First, start early and start gently, long before a crisis. The worst time to have this conversation is in the emotional aftermath of an accident or a frightening incident. The best time is gradually, over multiple low-pressure conversations, beginning when you first notice early signs. This turns a single traumatic confrontation into an ongoing, collaborative dialogue. Second, lead with concern and love, not authority and accusation. The difference between "you're not safe to drive anymore," and "I love you and I'm worried about you," and "I want to make sure you stay safe and don't hurt yourself or anyone else," is the difference between a confrontation and a partnership. Center their well-being, not your judgment. Third, wherever possible, involve them in the decision rather than imposing it. People accept conclusions they help reach far more readily than conclusions handed to them. Ask questions. "How are you feeling about driving at night lately?" "I noticed that scrape on the bumper. What happened there?" Let them participate in the assessment of their own abilities. Many older adults, given a safe and non-judgmental space, will acknowledge their own concerns, sometimes with relief that someone finally noticed. Fourth, use outside authority to depersonalize the issue. This is one of the most powerful tools available to you. When the message comes from a doctor, an occupational therapist, or a formal driving evaluation rather than from an adult child, it removes the conflict from the family relationship. Your parent can be angry at a policy or a test result far more easily than at their own child, and your relationship survives intact. And that brings me to something most families don't even know exists: the professional driving evaluation. There are occupational therapists who specialize specifically in driver assessment for older adults. They conduct objective, comprehensive evaluations, both clinical and behind the wheel, and provide an unbiased, expert determination of whether someone is safe to drive. This is enormously valuable for two reasons. It removes the family from the role of judge, and it sometimes reveals that the parent is fine, or that specific, correctable issues are the problem. Which leads to my next point. Here's what most families never consider. This is not a binary choice between full driving and no driving. There is an enormous middle ground, and exploring it can preserve both safety and independence. Sometimes the problem is specific and fixable. Vision problems may be correctable with updated glasses or cataract surgery, and cataract surgery in particular can dramatically restore driving ability. Some medications impair driving and can be adjusted. Some physical limitations can be addressed with vehicle modifications or adaptive equipment. And even when full driving truly isn't safe, there's often room for restricted driving rather than no driving. Many older adults can drive safely under limited conditions: only during daylight, only in good weather, only on familiar local routes, avoiding highways and rush hour. This kind of self-imposed restriction can preserve meaningful independence for a long time while removing the highest-risk situations. A driving evaluation can help define exactly where those lines should be. The goal, whenever possible, is to match the restriction to the actual limitation, not to take everything away when something less drastic would keep everyone safe. This is the moment in the video where I want to ask you something directly. If this video has named a situation you're living with right now, if you've seen the dents, noticed the slower reactions, watched the family quietly stop riding along, share this video with the people who share your parents' care, because this conversation goes infinitely better when the whole family is aligned and approaching it with one calm, loving voice instead of fragmented worry. Share it. Leave a comment below telling me what you're navigating. And subscribe if you haven't yet, because next week's video continues this series directly. Here's what your family can do starting this week. Today, make an honest, specific assessment. Stop thinking in vague terms like, I worry about Dad driving, and start cataloging the specific, observable signs. Are there dents? Has there been getting lost? What exactly have you and others noticed? Write it down. Clarity is the foundation of everything that follows. This week, if you have concerns, ride with your parent deliberately and observantly, and begin the gentle, early conversation. Not an ultimatum, an opening. Lead with love and concern, ask questions, and listen. Also this week, think about who the right messenger is. If a direct family conversation feels likely to damage the relationship, consider routing this through your parent's doctor, who can raise it in a clinical context, or look into a professional driving evaluation in your area. This month, pursue a formal driving evaluation if the situation warrants it, and address any correctable factors. Schedule the eye exam, review medications with the pharmacist, ask about cataracts, and critically begin building the alternative transportation plan now before it's needed. Because here is the truth most families miss. The conversation about giving up driving is impossible when there's no alternative, and much more manageable when there is. Map out the rideshare options, the senior transportation services, the family members who can help, the delivery services for groceries and pharmacy. When your parent can see that losing the keys doesn't mean losing their freedom, the entire conversation changes. Ongoing. Treat this as a process, not a single event. Keep watching, keep talking gently, and keep the door open. Here's what I want you to carry with you from today. David's father did stop driving, eventually, but the way it happened mattered enormously. After that Tuesday, the family didn't confront him with anger or ultimatums. They arranged a professional driving evaluation, which gave them an objective, non-personal answer. They discovered his cataracts were severe and largely correctable. He had the surgery. He drove safely in daylight and on local roads for 2 more years before transitioning gradually and on his own terms to not driving at all, with a transportation plan already in place that kept him connected to his life. He didn't lose his dignity. He didn't lose his relationship with his children, and no one got hurt because the family finally found the courage and the right approach to have the conversation they'd been avoiding. The hardest part of this is not the logistics. It's the love and the fear tangled together, the desire to keep your parents safe colliding with a desire not to take away the independence that makes their life feel like their own. Hold both, they're both right. And know that approaching this with patience, respect, and a real plan is how you honor both at once. You may be the person in your family who finally starts this conversation. Start it early, start it gently, and start it before a Tuesday afternoon forces your hand. If this video gave you something real, something you're going to act on, or share with someone, or carry into a conversation with your own family, please take a moment to like it. Share it with the people who share your parents' care, because this goes so much better when a family faces it together. And leave a comment below telling me what you're navigating, what's worked for you, or what you're afraid of. I read every one. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe. This is where I publish honest, clinical, practical guidance for families who are trying to do right by the people they love every single week. Thank you for being here and for caring enough to watch all the way to the end. That attention is exactly what makes the difference. I'll see you soon.